Hey there guys, so basically I'm here with my 93 M998 Humvee. Did the standard keyed ignition swap out. And so with the keyed ignition, one of the reasons I didn't do it right away was because I didn't want to lose that military look and feel. I mean, the whole purpose of my Humvee is just to have something that's a collectible military vehicle. And so I didn't really want to start cutting holes in it, and I certainly don't want a key hanging from it like we have right now with our, U.S. Army Home Depot purchase lanyard. It just doesn't fit the look or feel of the vehicle. So here's my thought. I'm going to try and modify the key to fit on the inside of the old manual switch. And therefore, the key topper will actually look like the original switch that was there. And so that's what we're about to do, and we'll see how far along we get and what kind of trouble we can get into. All right, so here we are in the workshop. You'll have to forgive the exposed ceiling tiles, whatever. So here's the standard key. You get 4 of them with that. Now you'll note that the key diameter and the actual switch, this was the original switch that was on that you used to activate the ignition. You'll note that it's actually pretty darn close. So I'm thinking with a little modification and a whole lot of either Gorilla Glue 2-part epoxy or some bronze flux cord brazing rods, I should be able to permanently attach this switch to the back of the key. One of the things that you're going to want to make sure you do, or at least for me, is that it sits deep enough on the key so that it sits flush or as flush against the dashboard as possible. Nothing looks worse than having it dangle out like that. So I'm going to have to go back, sort of eyeball the distance where the key should be set, and hopefully I'll end up with something that looks kind of like that. So when the key is inserted, it looks like the standard military on and off switch, and to the casual observer will appear to be stock, yet I still have the full functionality of a keyed ignition. All right, so first we're going to go back out to the truck, going to fit it up, and then we'll break out the Dremel tool and the grinder, put it in the clamp, and start cutting. All right, so while I was out here sort of fitting up the knob with the key, and again, it would look like that, I did notice that the inner diameter of the switch actually fits near perfectly and centers up with the back of the key housing. So what that means is if I get the right length of the key so that it can go deep enough, it'll actually sit completely over that. And from the outside, as you can see, it wouldn't look anything out of the ordinary. Obviously that bright chrome ring is gonna have to get hit with a little rattle can black, which we have plenty lying around. But as you can see, if I got it done correctly, it would look pretty clean. So now what that means though, if you look at the key, that means I'm going to have to basically modify the entire top piece of the key. I'm probably going to cut it straight back along this top flange here and the bottom flange, so it's just one long straight piece, like a full tang knife design, and then slowly cut back as far as I need so that the key housing, or I should say the switch itself, can fit completely over top and snug on the panel as you see here. So that's the plan anyway. A bit of trial and error will be involved with this. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is I noted that inside of what appears to be a brass, either a one-piece brass fitting, or at least it has a brass insert, but as well as a brass insert, there is a felt insert. So I suspect that that will cause me some trouble when it comes to bonding the key to the switch itself. So we're going to go back and we're going to try to pull that felt ring out, and I'll show you what kind of tool I'm going to try and use for that. But anyway, this is exciting. I mean, look at how clean that's going to be. The average person isn't going to know that there's a key in there. Because one of the greatest things I get to do with this when people ask me about the truck and they ask how to run it is that I could show them that it doesn't require a key, and that sends a whole message to people like, oh, this is not an ordinary vehicle. So hopefully I can maintain that. So the whole purpose of coming out here with the key was to mark how deep it comes in So I'm just going to use a standard Sharpie. I'm sure there's probably a better tool to use for this, but at least that will give me an idea roughly of where. Now I'm just getting creative, seeing if I can darken this with just the Sharpie, but it probably won't look right. We'll have to rattle can that. But now what I've done is I've marked the key roughly how deep it needs to be, so when it sits in the slot, I know how far I can go with it. So if I make it too short, it won't fully seat and therefore wouldn't turn the ignition, as you can see here. So it's got to be fully seated, and then it will turn. By the way, and it still works. That's good. All right, cool. All right, guys, so that took all of 2 seconds. So this is the felt ring that was found inside of the switch. I just use your standard auto pick tool. All it does is prevent sort of rubbing from when the system is installed, maybe keeps it from vibrating on the dash. So I first thought that the entire key or switch may have been made out of brass or copper. It appears, though, that it's just a ring. I don't know. I've kind of accepted the fact that I will probably permanently ruin this switch. I'm assuming with all the guys out there doing the keyed ignition swaps, there is a plethora of these military switches available on eBay. So I'm pretty sure I'm pretty comfortable with destroying this. However, if you're not, you might consider going out and getting a couple of these ahead of time. So now we're going to start cutting into the key, and I think what I'm going to do is just cut the key down as narrow as possible and fit it into the back of the bracket. Don't you just hate it? You got a whole bunch of tools, you got everything you need, and you know you've got the tool that you need, but you can't find it. And no matter how much you search, you can't find it. So obviously I wanted to measure the inside diameter of this, and for that I wanted to use a set of digital calipers. I have digital, I have analog, I have calipers everywhere. However, I can't find calipers, so I'm going to basically have to T-square it, eyeball it, and hope to hell I got it right cut. But you know, whenever it comes to grinding stuff like this that fit, I always find that grinding less is more. In other words, a little bit at a time, test fit, a little bit at a time, test fit, a little bit at a time. I mean, a lot of you guys already know that. It's just more time consuming, but then you get the right fit. So here we go. We'll see how far we get along. All right, so what I've done, I just hit it with the angle grinder with a cutting disc. For the first initial big cuts. Keys are real soft material. It took less than 30 seconds to cut through everything. So now we have basically the key is cut flat. All right, as you can see, now that I've got it out of the vise, you can see how badly I cut that. I don't really care at this point. It was just the big first large cuts just to get a bunch of material gone. You'll note now that it's still got a bit of a ways to go. In a sense, not terrible, but some. So we'll get the Dremel out and we'll start doing it. And the idea is for me to get it wedged down in there, and then all I need to do is sort of fill backfill that with some epoxy, and that should be it. Just keep in mind though that we want it pretty far down the key so that we get everything all mounted up real close so that the switch is sitting flush. All right, so this is where we've gotten so far. I broke the Dremel out. I worked it down probably a bit too much initially. As you can see, there's not much left of the key. I went ahead and used a pair of snips to cut off the ends just because, you know, grinding with the Dremel. Yeah, as you can see, the key kind of fits snugly in there, kind of holds its position. As you can see, I think I can go about another millimeter, 2-3 millimeters more before it fits flush. So we're going to go out to the truck right now and we're going to test fit it. See how it looks, see what other changes we need to make. That's pretty flush. So from what I can see now, it looks like the key will have to slide down just a hair, which actually might be, sorry, I don't mean to lose focus on the actual image. I'm trying to move the switch around and everything else, and I don't make YouTube videos very often, so. Here, let's see how that, see now that fits a little bit. That's a little bit better, right? And then, of course, all that sort of negative space in there will be filled with epoxy. And I'm actually thinking for preservation purposes, the screw that used to hold that switch in place, which is on the original ignition switch from the military right here, this little piece here. I think what I'll do is Dremel the threads off of that, and then while the epoxy is still wet, just basically put the head in that little hole there. And that way it looks like the screw's still there. So really, most people won't even know that it's a key. All right, so let's go out and fit it in the truck and see where we're at so far. All right, so here we are. The key goes in. Obviously it's still loose, it isn't epoxied yet, but there's still quite a gap. So we want to cut that gap down. So just want to make note of the gap. And it's, you know, as I said, lined up with the black marking on the key from the Sharpie. So I know that I have to come in a bit, but I want to take my time at it and make sure it really gets done the right way. This should be pretty easy. We should be able to just cut down with the snips the remaining distance on the key. We'll test fit it once again and probably be epoxying within the next 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, the whole project has only taken me, I don't know, 5-10 minutes tops, maybe. Well, probably longer than that, but you know, it took longer to go to Home Depot to buy the step-down drill bit than it is to actually do the project. The wiring on the vehicle took no time once I figured out what wire went where. It was just simply, as they state, plug and play, and it works fine. It's not overloaded, it's not being overworked, the switch is fine. All right, so let's go ahead and cut the rest of this down. Again, I'm just going to use the snips and just sort of roughly trim the bits off the bottom, and we'll go to another test fit, and you'll see me again once that test fit's complete. Okay guys, so the test fit is done. I was able to cut the key down, get it fitted so that the switch fit flush. As you can see, this is the end result. So it's a fancy key fob or key topper. I actually ended up going with quick steel 2-part putty. The reason I chose to go with that was I realized that in order to get a perfect fit, I would need to be able to move the key around and get it fitted square and properly. So I opted for that because the putty would hold the key steady while I inserted it and got it nice and flush. I then took a moment to bond a screw to the end of that just to, you know, finish off the look. I do like the way this came out, as I will show you. All right, so as you can see, while I was waiting for the putty to dry, I also quickly wire brushed the ignition and kind of scuffed it up. But as you can see, I didn't really scuff it up well enough because it's already coming off on the bottom here. But for the time being, that'll have to do. But it definitely tones the whole look down. And of course, what you guys are all really interested in, here's the key in. That's how it looks. So from their driver's compartment, that's how that looks. Key comes out, boom, like that. Goes in, turn to run. The proverbial wait light comes on. Still waiting. All right, there, now it's out. And it starts. Pretty simple. I think it came out great. I like the fact that it looks stock. Obviously more of that black paint's coming off. But there you go. Nice and flush. And it's now a keyed ignition without looking like one.